Welcome to the Southern Oracle. I am Shade, and today I'm going to talk about God. No, that was just a joke. I'm not going to talk about God in himself. But I'm going to bring up the subject that is, in my eyes, quite fascinating when I take a look at the way spirituality is seen for the moment being. A lot of people who are telling me that they try to get away from religion, especially Christian religion and Catholic religion with everything that happened there and so on and so on. They go on using the word God. So they talk about energies, about that pure energy, everything where you can tap into to get everything out of it, the universal energy, and it is God for them. They're talking about, let's say, I put it between brackets, karma. It is God who is caring for this. Whatever comes up, they come up with the idea of God. And as I said, a lot of people, when they start having questions, they go into that direction of saying, I have a question, but you have to answer to that question in my own box, in my own reality, in my own beliefs and my own belief system. And I like it because a lot of questions that still come up with people who have this God spirituality has a lot to do with the fact that they still have perception of something they call God. And yes, I know all the things. No, it's not the God you can read in the Bible. It's not the God of Christianity. It's not the God from the Vatican, and so on and so on. I have bad news for you. It is exactly that God you are talking about. Because actually what you're trying to do is those 2% of consciousness tries to convince the rest of your subconscious that it is not that same God. But all the teachings that you had, all the ideas that you had, all the experience concerning how you were raised are based on this one God. A male God in a unique form. And that is actually what is holding you in your box. And on that page I was telling you already about in the first message that I made, you had that question coming up concerning, or there came questions up concerning God and so on. I said, what is actually the point when you take just the fact and leave the word God away? Why is it that you say, okay, we have a universal energy, a universal consciousness, but I have to call it God? Why do you have to call it God? Why do you have the audacity to keep actually doing exactly what those Christians did that you tried to deny that your God comes from? They put their religion onto other cultures. Whenever someone said something else, they even kill people. Oh, you don't go so far and kill people. But the tone when someone is telling you that actually you are lying to yourself is still as aggressive. You just don't have, fortunately enough, the weapons. But it's still the same. So actually you take something universal and you put the word God on it. And you are not aware, or you do not want to be aware, or you even deny and try to push it away, that the idea of God in itself comes from those religions, and to put it onto other things. And you are doing exactly the same. So if it is not this God you are talking about, why do you need the word? I have to say, over here, when I try to get away from all this, it is slightly difficult to find a word for it. I call it universe, first of all. If I would go into the direction of Far Eastern cultures, it's Tao for me. Because actually, if you read the Tao of the King, you get an idea of this without all those laws and rules and blah which are linked to it. And also, and that is something else that I will pick up in another podcast, it doesn't bring up this good and evil stuff, because they do not work like that. If you go to native directions, then you have, for example, for Lakota, you have Wakan Tanka. Wakan means great, big, and Tanka means holy. So the great spirit, the great holy thing. They are not going and use another word for this, okay? And this happened to me once when I explained this to someone, and I said, yes, in Far Eastern cultures you have Tao, that is God. And in native countries you have Wakan Tanka, that is God. No, this is not God, because God had been very well defined. And just to go and try to deform the word and deform actually what you and your ancestors have kept onto all that time is not going to make the thing correct and right. And as long as you are not able actually to say, okay, wait a second, there are other regions who have belief systems and spirituality too, and they do not need a word like God, or they have their own words, and let me take a look at this before using my words and to put them, onto their beliefs and onto their definitions. Well, that's more than just staying in your box. What does that mean? I'll give you a very simple idea. The problem is that if you come up with this idea to say, that is God, and you are trying to tell me that it is not the God from religion and so on, and I'm telling you, actually, that's denial, the first of the steps of Elisabeth Kübler-Ross acceptance. I got the experience. Let me explain. So what happens, first of all, is that even if you tell me that it has nothing to do with it, you go along with the same kind of morality. Okay? And your morality is very simple. There is good and there is bad, and whatever is light and has a higher vibration is good, and whatever is dark or has a lower vibration is bad. You keep on to a duality that does not exist like that in other directions. And whatever you're going to say and whenever you're going to talk to me, the chance or the risk that you're going into that direction, and that actually it's very difficult for you to become aware that other ones are not sitting in that same box, are very, very high. And I give you a small example. I had a very short conversation with someone who sent me a message and said, hello, child of light. And I was like, what? No. And I answered, I consider myself rather to be a child of darkness. And she was, how so? How can you? Because a lot of people, the moment I use the word darkness, they consider this to be the bad side. So light is the good side. Okay, light is amazing and it's good and it's pure, and darkness cannot be pure. Again, let me explain this a little bit on the fact that I have another point of view and other experiences. If you take a look at the Taoistic approach of light and darkness, the darkness is yin, and it's the pure yin where everything can be created out of. It's the great pool of opportunities, of possibilities, and you can tap into it. You tap into it with yang, with this one thing, to take that out. But actually, the mother part is the dark side. And go for it in the world, in nature, where the possibility of a child is born is inside of a mother's womb. It's dark, it's not light in there. Okay? So again, as above, so below. you are going to see it. And the moment the person was hearing from me, they said, I consider myself rather more like a daughter of darkness, in a very neutral way. I say that. It is not like, understand, I am the evil. Definitely not. Just simply, I consider it differently. The reaction was like, how so? And so I explained this thing. And what shocked me in a certain way was actually not, the person was not going against this, but the person has never considered the option that there are other beliefs. So it's not my single belief as a single human being. There are hundreds of thousands of people outside who have a different kind of belief. And the idea that there is another belief where darkness is not considered as something bad and something evil, and that it is Taoism, for example, so it's a whole belief system behind, did not even cross that person's mind. So actually, I would say that 90% of the people out there who are talking about spirituality are still clinging to this idea of God and the concept behind that God is the good, that God is the creator, that God is everything, and blah and blah and blah. All this still being clinging to this religious connotation, like a drowning person clinging to a venomous snake. And as long as people cannot let go of that part and say, okay, maybe there is more to it than just our binary way to see things in good and bad, and maybe we should stop trying to push this idea upon other systems and upon other symbols. I'm coming back to the symbol of what people call yin yang, which is actually Tai Chi. I'm going to pick that up in another podcast. They are not trying to understand the core of this other belief, but they are trying to put their imprint, which is still religious, which is still dualistic, monotheistic religion, and put it on it, and then say, oh no, we see it's the same. It is not the same. And as long as we keep going on clinging to this idea that it is the same, and it is all the same truth, you will find out all those very high spiritual, high between so I'm using the word now for a second in a slight sarcastic way, high spiritual people, your fifth dimension will disappoint you in a way you cannot even encompass for the moment being. So for those who are wandering, for those who are fighting with all this, who are struggling with it, and who still come up with my trust in God, and behind it is like, but not that God, blah, 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 blah. They cannot focus on what is really the energy, the pure energy, because they are still trying to define it. And just the way it is put in the Tao Te King, the Tao that you define is not the correct Tao, and if you define it as God, it cannot be the correct and the true universal energy, this pure energy that every vibration comes from. And it doesn't depend if the vibration is high or low, where every nuance comes from, and it doesn't matter if it is a light one or a dark one, where all this comes and becomes a play, a game. And as long as you keep struggling with this, maybe you just take a step back out of this box and consider that this box is still functioning under the same rules. I will certainly pick up the idea to talk about God again, and will show you that, for example, if you want something that works really well, This is not rules where you have to follow them, but explanations, like, for example, the 7 principles of the Kahuna, or the 7 principle of the Kybalion, which I propose you to read in such a case. And you will find out that actually the God you're talking about is still functioning under those principles. So it is not above all this. And so it is just something made into this program of this matrix we are working and we are living in. So again, let me come back to the point. If you are struggling with all this, and if you have still questions, and I told you in the beginning of my podcasts that it is not to answer questions, but to show you that some questions do not even arise, maybe you just try and let go of the word God, and don't try to fill that void with something, but feel into this kind of void and find out what is behind whatever you called God. I assure you, it is greater, it is vaster, and I think it is true. But that's my theory. Thank you.